"Sir, you need to move back. This section is for only high-class premium billionaires only." The words dropped like a stone in a still lake, polite on the surface but heavy with something colder underneath. The flight attendant's smile was rigid, professional. Her eyes, however, told a different story, one of skepticism, irritation, and subtle dismissal. The man standing in the aisle didn't look like he belonged there, not to her at least. He wore a black hoodie with a worn collar, dark jeans, and scuffed white sneakers. No monogrammed briefcase, no tailored Armani suit, no glint of a Patek Philippe on his wrist. Nothing that screamed billionaire. He looked average, maybe even broke. He didn't react at first, just stood silently, blinking once as if the words needed to settle in. Then he reached into the front pocket of his hoodie, pulled out his boarding pass, and extended it toward her. "Seat 1A, he said calmly, his voice low and even. She barely looked at the pass. Instead, she studied his face, then his clothes. Again, and something in her jaw tensed. "There must be a mistake," she said, her voice clipped now, her polished name badge catching the light. "This section is reserved for elite passengers, first-class members, our Platinum Legacy Circle, and ultra-premium business flyers. I'm going to have to ask you to return to the economy cabin." He tilted his head, not angry, just curious. "So, even with the ticket, I can't sit down?" "I'm not trying to be rude," she replied, though she clearly was. "But these seats are meant for, well, a certain class of traveler. You understand?" From behind her, a few passengers in the plush white leather seats began to look up. One man, in a gray suit and Bluetooth earpiece, leaned into the aisle to see what the delay was about. His lips curled as he took in the man's outfit. "They're letting streetwear in now?" he muttered, mostly to himself, but loud enough for others to hear. A soft chuckle followed. A woman in designer sunglasses glanced up from her tablet, looked the man over once, and returned to scrolling as if dismissing a nuisance. First class smelled like citrus-scented air and exclusivity, and he didn't fit the fragrance. The man, still holding the boarding pass, took a slow breath. "Is the seat empty?" "I don't believe that's the point," the flight attendant snapped, her patience visibly thinning. "Please move to the back. We're trying to complete boarding." He looked at her for a long moment, not with anger, not even offense. Just quiet, penetrating stillness, like someone observing the scene from outside himself. "All right," he said softly, and with that, he turned and walked down the narrow aisle toward coach. The flight attendant exhaled, half in relief, half in triumph. She turned and offered a stiff smile to the other first-class passengers. "Thank you for your patience," she said. "We'll be airborne shortly." The curtain behind her swayed gently as the man moved beyond it, leaving luxury, leather, and legroom behind. Back in economy, he slid into the middle seat in row 36 between a tired-looking mother juggling a baby and a teenager in a hoodie, watching anime on his phone. The air was denser back here, the seats more cramped. Someone's fast food had already started to smell. The mother gave him a sympathetic smile as he helped her retrieve a dropped pacifier. "First class was full?" she asked. He just smiled. "Guess it wasn't my kind of crowd." She laughed. "You and me both." Outside, baggage carts whirred across the tarmac. The plane's engines began to hum. A robotic voice announced the final cabin checks. The man in the hoodie pulled out his phone, a simple device. No flashy case, no diamonds, just efficient. He opened a secure messaging app. His fingers moved quickly. One sentence. "Denied seat. Initiate Aegis protocol. Level 1. Then he put the phone away, leaned back in his seat, and closed his eyes for a moment. He could have made a scene, could have mentioned his name, Noah Reeve, the CEO of Aegis Corporation, the man whose software was embedded in nearly every major airline security infrastructure, financial ledger, and digital logistics system. The man Forbes had called the silent architect of the skies. But if he had, he wouldn't have seen the truth. He wouldn't have seen how they treated people they thought were beneath them. 15 rows ahead, the flight attendant continued smiling for the rich, pouring champagne, making small talk. The tablet in her hand was glitching, just a flicker. Now, She tapped it, confused. The screen reset. She tried again. Still frozen. A ripple of unease crept up her spine. A minute later, the aircraft's Wi-Fi cut out. Another minute, and the pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a slight technical issue. Nothing to worry about. We may need to return to the gate briefly for a system check. Please remain seated." Murmurs spread like wildfire. In row 36, Noah Reeve opened one eye, smiled faintly. His message had been received, and the airline had just stepped into a storm they didn't know existed. A storm with a hoodie and a seat in economy. "Sir, please stop making a scene. There's nothing we can do now." The words came with a brittle smile, the kind flight supervisors wear when they're more concerned with containing optics than correcting wrongs. Olivia, the lead flight attendant, stood over him now in row 36, flanked by two junior staffers nervously pretending to tidy up snack trays. The man they were speaking to, still dressed in the plain black hoodie and scuffed sneakers, looked up with eyes that didn't match his outfit, sharp, quiet eyes, the kind that calculated every word before it left his lips. "I'm not making a scene," he replied evenly. "I'm sitting in the seat your crew assigned me to, after bumping me from the one I paid for." Olivia straightened, clipboard in hand. "Yes, and we understand there was a mix-up with the seating arrangement. However, the flight is full and the matter is resolved," he cut in, one brow rising slowly. "You think this is resolved?" She faltered, her words catching in her throat. Something in his voice unsettled her, like he wasn't just speaking for himself, like he wasn't the sort of man used to being brushed off. He wasn't angry, he was precise. Behind him, a toddler shrieked. The mother next to him bounced the child on her knee, mouthing a silent, "Sorry." He nodded gently in return and shifted to give her more space. He didn't belong here. That much was clear. But he wasn't causing a disruption. No raised voice, no threats, just presence. Still, Olivia felt a flutter of panic when the man picked up his phone. Across 3 rows, a passenger in a blazer leaned over to his seatmate. "That guy's about to write a complaint for sure, or tweet. Maybe he's some influencer." The seatmate snorted. "Not dressed like that, he's not." They were wrong. He wasn't about to tweet. He was about to end careers. With his thumb, he opened a secure app, one not available on any app store, face scan, passcode, retina verification. Then one message, just one, was typed and sent. "Denied seat. Log into Aegis. Initiate audit protocol, level 5. No mercy." Within 30 seconds, the audit team at Aegis Corporation, his corporation, received it. Across the ocean, lights flickered to life inside a secure server room. Algorithms began combing through the airline's integrated systems. Digital, infrastructure, passenger logs, partner contracts, even the aircraft's avionics firmware. The systems didn't ask permission. They already belonged to Aegis. This wasn't hacking. It was a full-blown corporate override. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, the co-pilot's interface screen blinked. At first, it seemed like a glitch, just a brief flicker. Then a message appeared on the secure comms terminal. "Unregistered access alert. Aegis CEO override in effect. Audit in progress. Ground command rerouted." Captain Rourke frowned. "What the hell is Aegis doing inside our flight systems?" His co-pilot stared, face pale. "That's the cybersecurity group, right? They manage the software backbone for our flight traffic and security layers." "Exactly. But why are they in our bird right now?" "Sir," a flight engineer buzzed in from the deck, "all our internal networks are suddenly rerouting through an external gateway, labeled Aegis Oversight. That's not standard." The captain's hands tightened around the control. "Yoke, call ground. Right now." Back in 36B, the man glanced out the window. Clouds rolled past like slow-moving thoughts. He didn't need to see the chaos he had triggered. He'd seen this dance before. His name wasn't on any promotional posters, not even the Aegis website. But in the global tech world, he was legend. The ghost founder who had built an AI security empire so powerful that even governments relied on his architecture. His choice to remain anonymous to the public wasn't just privacy, it was strategy. A bump from first class didn't offend him. The presumption behind it did. That a man in plain clothes couldn't possibly belong in a luxury seat. That dignity could be measured in cufflinks and cologne. 15 rows ahead, Olivia was whispering now to another crew member, panic creeping into her voice. "Something's happening," she muttered. "My POS tablet just crashed. So did the system that tracks passenger logs." "I just lost connection to the crew channel," her colleague whispered back. In first class, passengers noticed the Wi-Fi was down. Then the overhead lights dimmed, flickered and glowed back, just a hair too bright, subtle, disorienting. A billionaire hedge fund manager in seat 1C looked around unnerved. "Something's off," he said, adjusting his noise-canceling headset. "The man." Their entire digital backbone, bookings, traffic sync, and elite customer APIs ran through Aegis, and the man in had just pulled the plug. The man who had once held seat 1A smiled faintly. They were just starting to notice. In Aegis headquarters, the full audit was complete. A flag popped up. Incident, discriminatory reassignment of Aegis CEO severity, executive threat level. Action. Taken. Temporary revocation of digital partnerships with carrier. Immediate reroute of Fortune 100 travel accounts. Public PR alert pending. Back on the plane, the airline didn't know it yet, but every one of their highest value corporate clients was being rerouted to competitors. Loyalty accounts were freezing, miles vanished, status perks revoked. Their entire digital backbone, bookings, traffic sync, and elite customer APIs ran through Aegis, and the man in 36B had just pulled the plug. "We need to know who's on this plane now." Captain Rourke's voice cracked as he leaned forward in the cockpit, staring at the message that had just hijacked his dashboard screen. It hadn't come from air traffic control. It hadn't come from inside the aircraft's secure network. It came from something, or someone, outside the airline's normal communication protocol. He turned to his co-pilot, Singh, who looked equally rattled. "You saw it too?" Rourke asked. Singh nodded, blinking rapidly. "That wasn't just some phishing pop-up. It tunneled straight through the firewall. That alert, it said Aegis Level 1 breach. And it knew your name, sir." Rourke reached for the emergency satellite phone, fumbling. "Get JFK on the line. I don't care if they're in a staff meeting. Tell them we've got a security breach on Flight 277 to London. Someone's playing chess inside our cockpit, and we didn't invite them." But Singh wasn't listening anymore. His eyes had drifted to the seat manifest. "Captain," he said quietly, "look at this." Rourke turned. On the crew tablet, the seating chart flashed red over seat 1A, the same seat the gate agents had reassigned 15 minutes before takeoff. But the name attached to the manifest wasn't some mistake. It wasn't a fluke. It read, "Reed Montgomery, Executive Access, Aegis Systems." And beneath that, a line in bold. "Level 1 asset, full protocol override, all access granted." Rourke leaned back in his chair slowly, as if the gravity of the plane had just doubled. "Reed Montgomery?" he said under his breath. Singh looked up, stunned. "The Reed Montgomery? CEO of Aegis? That Aegis? The one who created the AI, infrastructure behind half the Fortune 500's digital operations. He's supposed to be in Switzerland today, on CNBC," Rourke whispered, rubbing his temples. "Why the hell is he on my flight? And why did we just bounce him from his seat like he's a kid trying to sneak into business class?" The co-pilot didn't answer. He was already watching the in-flight systems begin to flicker. Minor things, nothing critical yet. The in-flight. Entertainment reset for rows 1-8. The first-class lighting dimmed unnaturally, flickering like a haunted house. Wi-Fi access dropped entirely. Passengers were starting to notice. Down in row 36B, Reed Montgomery sat with perfect stillness. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't glaring at the attendants or demanding anything. In fact, he seemed almost bored, as if this was an expected outcome. A crying baby was to his left. A young woman attempting to rock her child offered him an apologetic glance. Reed smiled faintly, offering her his unopened orange juice. "Thank you," she whispered, surprised by his calm. Most people would lose their minds back here. I prefer to observe, he said, especially when people reveal who they really are. As she nodded, distracted by her baby, he turned back to the small tablet in his lap, completely offline from the airline's systems. This was his own hardware, his own network. It didn't need Wi-Fi. It lived in the cloud where only a few elite AI systems could access it. He opened the Aegis command interface with a biometric scan. The tablet's display shimmered with a glowing interface. System status: Flight 277. In progress. Priority flag: Customer violation. Logged. AI response level: Moderate. Ethical protocols engaged. Ready for escalation? YNN. He tapped Y and just. Like that, 3 things happened. The airline's customer loyalty algorithm crashed for all in-flight flights across the country. A silent alert was sent to the board of directors and their private Slack channel labeled Urgent Aegis. Violation 3. The airline's top-tier business accounts were rerouted with automatic cancellation prompts, suggesting alternative carriers, competitors with whom Aegis also had contracts. None of this was visible to the passengers or crew. Not yet. But at corporate HQ, people were running. Back at JFK Operations Command, a junior systems analyst stood up so fast his chair toppled over. "Ma'am, you need to see this," he shouted. The floor manager rushed over. "What is it?" He pointed to the server logs. "All of our back-end dependencies, booking engines, reward systems, gate clearance software, they're being flagged as compromised. And they're not just shutting down, they're being redirected to audit nodes we don't even control." "What kind of audit nodes?" she asked, already fearing the answer. He clicked into the trace code and opened the server signature. Aegis, Systems TM, and Corporate Oversight Division, host, Reed Montgomery. The manager paled. "Wait," she whispered. "Isn't he the guy who—" "Yes," the analyst said grimly. "The guy who made our system possible, just pulled the plug on it." The manager grabbed the phone and dialed the VP of Public Relations. "Get the chairman, get legal, and someone better call that plane and apologize." Meanwhile, on board, the passengers began to feel the ripple effects. First class could no longer order meals. Their screens had frozen. Their tablets restarted in slow loops. A man wearing a Tom Ford blazer loudly complained, "This is outrageous. I paid for this." The flight attendant who had told Reed to move back was now sweating, trying to get her device to reboot. Her fingers trembled slightly as she remembered the look he'd given her. Not angry, not defensive, just disappointed. She leaned toward the head attendant. Can I speak to him? That guy in the hoodie?" The head attendant narrowed her eyes. "What guy?" "The one I told to move. He was in seat 1A. He's in the back now." There was a long pause. "You mean Reed Montgomery?" The head attendant whispered, stunned. The attendant's face went white. "We have to fix this," she said, already stepping toward the aisle. But it was too late. Reed's tablet blinked once. Public transparency enabled. And across the globe, financial news outlets received a single, well-worded statement drafted by Aegis AI, already optimized for legal safety, ethical clarity, and maximum PR damage. When the world assumes wealth looks like arrogance, even billionaires get treated like stowaways. But when integrity's denied a seat, it finds its own way to fly. Do you know who you just kicked off first class? The question sliced through the air like a scalpel, quiet but dangerous. It came from Sarah Langston, operations manager for East Coast routes, as she turned from her terminal at JFK's Internal Flight Response Center. Her voice, though barely above a whisper, made everyone in the control room freeze. Brian, a junior customer support associate barely 6 months into the job, looked up with wide eyes. "No, I thought it was a boarding mix-up." He didn't look like, well, you know, one of them. Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Define them, Brian." Brian swallowed hard, suddenly aware that his words were being recorded. "I mean, someone who looked like a billionaire." Sarah didn't blink. That man is Cameron Cross, founder and CEO of Aegis Corporation. The name landed like a thunderclap. Even those unfamiliar with tech knew the name Aegis, an AI-powered conglomerate that quietly operated the infrastructure behind some of the world's largest corporations: aviation software, cybersecurity, client-facing loyalty systems, back-end logistics. Aegis didn't just serve airlines, they ran through them like blood in veins, silent, invisible, but absolutely vital. He didn't even make a fuss, Brian stammered, staring at the security footage. It showed Cross calmly folding his boarding pass and heading to 36B, not a single sign of arrogance. He didn't threaten anyone. He didn't say who he was. That's the problem, Sarah said grimly. He didn't have to. She turned her screen around to show them what had happened in the last 12 minutes. One by one, the blinking. Alerts had turned red. The airline's loyalty program system, temporarily suspended, their cloud-based customer profile interface timed out, several exclusive access dashboards that catered to high-paying premium clients offline. All handled by Aegis. All now inaccessible. The company wasn't hacking them. This was no hostile intrusion, no lawsuits, no viruses. It was worse. It was a silent revocation. In aviation terms, it was like the ground beneath them had just disappeared mid-flight. Sarah's phone buzzed. She looked at the incoming message from an unlisted number, her face tightening as she read it. PR fallout begins in 10 minds. Cross never forgets, don't call. Watch the markets. Aegis Legal Ops. She glanced up at the main wall where the airline's internal stock tracker sat. The share price hadn't moved yet, but it would, and when it did, it wouldn't stop. Turn back to Brian. I want the full transcript of the incident. Every word that flight attendant said. Every face that laughed. And I want the passenger manifest pulled now. Brian scrambled to comply, but his hands were shaking. Meanwhile, on the plane, things were starting to unravel. In Seat 1C, Carl Henley, a real estate tycoon with more ego than taste, was trying to refresh his in-flight email, but nothing worked. He jabbed the screen furiously. What is this crap? I can't even load my portfolio. His wife was equally irritated. Even the wine list is gone. I can't access the screen menu. Is this a budget airline now? The flight attendant, who had sent Cameron Cross away earlier, was now quietly sweating. Her handheld device was still bricked, frozen on the login screen. She'd tried rebooting 3 times, but it wouldn't load. All she could see now was a strange line of text that wasn't part of the normal interface. Error 1A, class violation, logged, PR escalation enabled. She had no idea what it meant, but it was terrifying in its simplicity. Just then, she noticed the man in Seat 1A had changed, replaced by someone who clearly wasn't supposed to be there. Someone who'd been upgraded after Cross had left the seat, and now, even that man's system wasn't working. Excuse me, she said to her supervisor, pulling him aside. I think something is wrong with the first-class cabin software. All our systems are failing. The supervisor barely got the chance to respond before the captain's voice crackled through the speakers again. Flight crew, we've received a systems flag. Please prepare for... The line cut. No chime followed, just static. Back at JFK, Sarah watched the chaos bloom like an oil spill. The airline's internal communication app froze. Their IT help desk started receiving auto-generated emails from Aegis AI with subject lines that were cold and chilling. Strategic partnership under review, flagged for ethics violation. Tier 1, client transition initiated. PR schedule release, set for T-07 source. They were being dropped, erased, dismantled, not loudly, not publicly, yet. Another phone rang. This time it was the airline's VP of Public Relations, red-faced and breathless as he barged into the room. What the hell did you people do? Do you realize Aegis just shut down access to our loyalty tier API for every platinum client? We can't even run customer identification for our lounges. Sarah stood, the only one who wasn't panicking. Sir, with all due respect, maybe next time we let the man sit in the seat he paid for. He stared at her. Why didn't he say who he was? Because, she said, he didn't need to prove anything. He was watching to see if we would treat him like a person. or a product of his clothing. Meanwhile, on board, Cameron Cross sat in 36B, quietly watching a toddler fall asleep. Next to him, unaware of the war unfolding on the ground, his phone buzzed with a message from his CTO. "Do you want us to halt the drop?" He looked around the plane. In first class, the people who laughed at him now looked restless, sweating. The flight attendant who turned him away paced back and forth, nervous. He typed back, "No, let it continue. They're about to learn the cost of arrogance." And as the minutes ticked by, every corner of the airline's digital empire began to fall dark. "This is your captain speaking. We owe someone on board a sincere apology." The voice came across the speakers with a shaky calm, the kind of composed panic only seasoned pilots could muster. First-class passengers looked up, startled. A baby stopped crying mid-wail, sensing the tension in the air. Flight attendants froze in the aisles. It wasn't just the words, it was the weight of them. Captains never said things like that. Not mid-air, not in public, and certainly not on behalf of someone in economy class. The passengers glanced around, confused. Who had triggered that announcement? The flight attendant who'd dismissed the man in the hoodie earlier now stood perfectly still near 1A, her throat dry. She hadn't been given any information, only a direct message from her manager flashing. On her inoperative tablet screen. "Stop everything, full alert. Incident with seat 1A is in corporate hands now. Aegis CEO on board. You need to make this right." Her hands trembled slightly as she tried to make sense of it all. In 36B, Cameron Cross didn't react. He simply sipped water from a plastic cup, gaze fixed on the screen ahead of him, though it, like most systems on board, was stuck on the airline's frozen home screen. Across the aisle, a college student looked at him curiously. "Hey, sorry to bother you," the student said, leaning slightly toward him. "But, are you the guy the captain's talking about?" Cameron turned slightly. "What makes you think that?" The student chuckled awkwardly. "Well, I saw the whole first class thing, and since you haven't moved and everything's going haywire now. Plus, they just made a whole plane-wide apology." Cameron gave a small, wry smile. "I suppose that's not something that happens every day." The student lowered his voice. "Who are you?" Instead of answering, Cameron turned the question back on him. "Tell me this. If someone sat next to you in economy wearing a hoodie and old sneakers, would you assume they were broke?" The student hesitated. "Honestly? Probably, yeah." "Exactly," Cameron replied. "That's why I didn't say anything." In first class, panic was creeping in under the polished surface of privilege. One executive, wearing a designer suit and gold cufflinks, tapped furiously at his phone. "This is insane! Why won't the Wi-Fi reconnect?" Another man, who had previously joked about low-class passengers sneaking up front, was now visibly sweating, trying to restart his tablet. His personal investment dashboard wouldn't load. Meanwhile, the champagne service had stopped completely. The flight attendants were whispering amongst themselves, passing notes and glaring anxiously toward the economy section. Their internal network was still frozen, their inventory system locked, and even the cabin lighting was flickering at random intervals. Then it happened. The curtain separating first class from the rest of the aircraft peeled back. Every head turned. A man in a dark, perfectly tailored suit stepped forward. He didn't belong to the regular crew. In fact, he hadn't even been seen boarding. He moved with intent, with the kind of quiet command that made people straighten instinctively. He was Edward Baines, head of in-flight operations for the airline. The fact that he was on this flight, unannounced, was no coincidence. He had boarded at the last moment through a secured side entrance after emergency clearance was granted. It was the fastest corporate response Sarah Langston's team had ever coordinated. Without a word, Baines walked down the aisle. He ignored the staring passengers, ignored the murmurs from the flight crew, and marched straight to row 36. He stopped at seat B. "Mr. Cross?" he asked. Cameron looked up. "Yes?" Baines extended his hand. "Sir, on behalf of our airline, I sincerely apologize for what happened to you today. You were treated in a manner far beneath your station and your humanity. We would like to invite you to return to first class and offer you full control over your travel experience now and for the future. The apology was formal, sincere, rehearsed, and everyone in the cabin heard it. Some looked ashamed. Others looked shocked. The same people who had laughed or scoffed earlier now watched, wide-eyed. Cameron didn't shake the man's hand. Instead, he simply replied, "And what about the others?" Baines looked confused. "Others?" "The passengers back here," Cameron said. "The woman struggling with 2 kids, the older man trying to keep his knees from jamming into the tray, the veteran with the service dog they wouldn't let. Upgrade." Baines hesitated. "Sir, this situation was specific to your treatment." "I wasn't mistreated because of who I am," Cameron interrupted. "I was mistreated because I didn't look like someone you valued. If I hadn't been the CEO of Aegis, I'd still be back here, invisible, and so would they." The words hit like thunder in the narrow cabin. Silence stretched long and heavy. A child's voice piped up faintly from across the aisle. "Mommy, is that man a superhero?" Cameron smiled softly. "No, just someone who got tired of watching people pretend kindness was for sale." Baines swallowed hard. "Mr. Cross, what would you have us do?" Cameron looked around. "Treat people better, not just when it costs you, but because it's the right thing to do." With that, he leaned back in his seat. "I'll stay right here, thanks." Baines nodded slowly, then turned and walked back through the plane, his face tight. He had been briefed on Cameron Cross's personality, how the tech magnate had grown up in poverty, had once slept in train stations, and had built Aegis not for wealth, but because he'd once been invisible. Now, he made sure no one else had to be. In the cockpit, the pilot received one final message across his emergency console. It came directly from Aegis. "Crisis protocol will end upon landing. Aegis will no longer support this airline's back-end systems after 14 days. Partnership status terminated. Public release scheduled in 4 hours." The pilot stared at the screen, then exhaled slowly. "We're flying into a storm," he muttered. "Not in the clouds. On the ground." If this Styrie gives you post to the energy, don't forget to subscribe my channel for more interesting videos. Thank you.